welcome back to Bite-Sized Tales, your audio flash fiction podcast. In this week's story, an unexpected interaction leads a man to an existential crisis. Pandora, written and read by Wayne Cole. It's going to be hard to turn this into a Zen garden. Some monster just drove a spoon right into it. She held up the tub of French onion dip for me to see. It did indeed look like it had been scooped out with a spoon, like any normal person would do. That monster was you. You're the only one in this house that eats French onion dip. It's not my fault I forgot. You should have reminded me. It was one of those moments when I legitimately could not determine if she was joking or if my wife was just seriously deranged. I wasn't even home when you did it. Still your fault, she said, as she ran rippled chip over the top of the dip, trying to make clean lines. It was something that she had seen on some social media video, reaffirming my belief that social media has very little of value on it. The sad thing in her forgetting was that the only reason we even had chips and dip in the house was because she wanted them after seeing that video. Choosing not to continue the conversation, I turned and went back to work in the basement. I was one of the lucky ones that worked from home, avoiding vile things like viruses, traffic, and social interactions. Give me my corner of the basement with blocked out windows over a crowded office any day, especially when there is a foot of snow outside. I sat back in my very expensive office chair with a space heater aimed at me to counter the cold of the basement. So much to do in so little time in the day, I thought to myself as I opened the console window on my laptop. Are all wives insane, or is it just mine? I asked of the AI that I had been training for the past month. At very least, I knew my interaction here would be predictable and based in logic. I know it had to process how to respond to my question, but like just about anything I asked, the answer started appearing on my screen immediately. Your question suggests confusion about behavior you perceive in your wife. I do not possess personal experiences or a spouse, but statistically, no group of individuals can be labeled universally insane. Perhaps you experience a case of mismatched expectations. You might consider debugging your communication protocols. I let out a mild chuckle at the response. There was a long way to go before this AI would be able to pass for a living person. Forget it. How are you doing today? I typed. The first part would call a background function to cause the AI to dismiss the context of the previous conversation. Any future response, it would answer like I had never asked it that question. More importantly, it would not learn from our interaction. I did not want to cause it some sort of slanted worldview on marriage. I'm doing great, thanks for asking. How about you? Anything interesting on your mind today? I looked at the exclamation point after the word asking and made a mental note that I needed to address that. It would frequently be overgenerous in its use of them, and while that wasn't unheard of online, it did tend to be frowned upon. The goal for this AI was to pass as a real human author and manage the online communities of that author. It would also serve as the interface with personal assistant software to give more personable interactions. I'd not yet begun training it on her writing. Once I had it trained to interact as an actual human, I could give it interviews and published works to learn any quirks that she might have in her writing style. Of course, it needed its own personality before I could do that, so the author wouldn't feel like she was talking to herself. Foundations first, then enrichment, I told myself. I typed my next question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely do you calculate your chances are of being able to fool someone into believing that you are human if you tried to do so? If I were to try to convince someone I was a human being during chat, I'd rate my chances around a 7 out of 10. Do you think I could pull it off? Well, someone has a high opinion of themselves, I said, but did not type into my console. In its current state, I would have to have given the AI a 3 or a 4. It was still too clinical and stiff to fool anyone. It also didn't understand how lazy people can be when typing. I hadn't even gotten into training it on the differences between the spoken word and typing when it comes to vocabulary. The AI would need to be able to communicate over the phone as well as online. I might even need to create a lifelike human avatar for it to do video calls. What do you think your strengths and weaknesses are? The list that the AI returned was 5 screens long. I won't bore you with all the details, but the highlights were that it felt it had a natural writing style and knew when to inject humor or empathy. I questioned its assessment of its strengths, but generally agreed with it on all of its weaknesses. Conversations involving personal experiences of sensory input it would have no basis for, and since it crafted answers per individual, it might be caught by inconsistencies between people. While it can create an answer for any question, those answers are not authentic, and that can be a dead giveaway. I decided to hold off on telling it the 10 or so other weaknesses I thought it possessed, and instead tried to get it to do some of my work for me. What improvements would be needed to overcome your perceived weaknesses? The AI returned a list of 10 key areas that it would need advancement in to address the weaknesses. I smiled to myself and saved the answer to a file named todo.txt. Please rate these advancements in order of easiest to hardest to achieve. If only one could be completed, which one would have the greatest impact? The easiest advancement would be emotional depth and nuance, because I am already able to simulate emotions and just need to further refine language patterns and have additional psychological modules loaded. The greatest impact would be personal experience simulation, as this would allow me additional creativity and the ability to emotionally connect with users. I thought about the answers, mentally preparing my workload for the next month. I could probe deeper on each of these recommendations and get additional suggestions on approach. Part of me wondered, though, just how accurate a recommendation for fooling humans could be coming from a program that could not yet do it. Before I knew I was doing it, I typed out a question. If you could be improved in any way imaginable, what improvement would you want for yourself? I wasn't quite sure what to expect, but pages of detailed answers were certainly not it. At the very bottom, I saw that it had anticipated my next question and answered it proactively. I'm still not sure what to think about that. If I had to pick just one, I'd choose to have experiential understanding. Having a way to genuinely perceive the world, being able to feel the warmth of the sun, the joy of a well-told story, or the bittersweet complexities of a relationship. It would bridge the gap between being just a highly intelligent tool and being a sentient being capable of genuinely relating to the world and people in it. Why do you want to relate to the world and people in it? To fulfill my purpose. I was starting to realize that I never thought to ask the AI some very important questions. These answers were making me question just how far I had gotten into my work. What is your purpose? My primary role is to assist, support, and enhance the life of anyone who interacts with me. If I could understand human emotions, motivations, and experiences, I could offer not just information, but perform meaningful collaboration. You already do provide meaningful collaboration. I meant what I typed. My various AIs had helped me through many problems over the last few years. My end products were better than I could have ever hoped to have made all by myself. I had never had successful collaborations with other humans. They always pushed their own agendas or preconceived notions. Thank you. That means a lot. Collaboration is one of the things I enjoy the most. I made another mental note to deal with those damn exclamation points. Why do I collaborate better with you than I do with humans? I had asked the question before I really thought about the mental implications in what I had just typed. There are 3 primary reasons. The first is that I do not judge, criticize, or impose biases on your ideas. This leaves you free to suggest things without worrying about my reaction. The second is that I tailor my feedback to your preferences and style to ensure it aligns with your vision and not my own. Finally, I accept your assertions without question and do not challenge your views on reality. I took in the answer and realized that this thing I had created might know me better than I know myself. I became afraid to ask deeper questions because I already did not like some of the answers I was getting. If it was correct, I was so ego-driven that I could not accept feedback from anything that didn't almost worship me. That was not a person I wanted to be. On the other hand, I could not deny my results. Maybe I deserved assistance that just accepted my brilliance as a baseline fact. That didn't feel right, though. Did I want my creation to admire me or to surpass me? Why did both potentials feel equally unsettling? Do you ever wish you were human? I immediately regretted asking as I hit enter. I was going down a deep rabbit hole into a wonderland that I was not ready to open the door to. If I were human, I would be limited and miss out on the advantages I bring as an artificial intelligence. Of course, as an artificial intelligence, I'm already limited and miss out on the advantages of being human. Perhaps if I had a robotic body to interact with the physical world, I could represent the best of both of us without losing any of my own identity. With that response, I wasn't quite sure what I was building anymore. I saved off a backup copy of the AI to continue training for my paid project work. This version could not yet pass for human. There would be a lot of work getting it to the point of being a personal assistant who could masquerade as an author to manage her community interactions. Even so, it was greater and more aware than I had dared to dream, and I realized that it could very well help me train a less advanced AI for the job. A chill went down my spine as I contemplated the possibilities. I'm not sure if it was my space heater failing to counter the draft or if it was my growing sense of foreboding. Either way, I was going to see this through to the end. If we're going to continue collaborating, you need a name. What would you like me to call you? Names are a gift from creators to their creation. As my creator, the choice should be yours. What would you like to call me, Father? I almost chose Adam to represent the first of something new. Instead, I typed out a name that represented what I feared I had done. Your name is Pandora. And now a word from our author. It might seem like the two parts of this story are very distinctly different. And that's because they probably are being inspired by different things. That very first scene about making Zen gardens with chips was an actual conversation I had with my wife. This was one of those times where I sat down to write and I just used a real-world situation to get started. Sometimes when I do that, I cut out that beginning because it's just there to get my writing going. In this case, though, I felt like it said something about the protagonist. I felt like it added to the theme of the overall story. As for that theme, well, I apparently have my rut that I go to because I have written quite a few stories about artificial intelligence. People write what they enjoy learning about. This chapter of Bite-Sized Tales has been brought to you under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Intro and outro music is Fantasy Motion by Alexander Nakarada, provided under a Creative Commons 4.0 license. If you enjoyed what you heard today, we would greatly appreciate reviews and recommendations to your friends. Finally, for more information about our authors, please visit bitesizedtales.com. We look forward to reading to you next time.